Good evening, everyone. Sorry, we've had a little technical difficulty up here, and I think it's probably good. We've got America's Other Space Program, but can't quite get the system to work. I'm very pleased. I should say I'm Isla Berman, the Director of Architecture, for any of our guests this evening. I'm very pleased to be able to welcome Tomás Saraceno to CCA as our lecturer this evening. Tomás is an artist and an architect, originally from Argentina, and now working in Berlin, although perhaps to be more accurate, he claims to live and work beyond planet Earth, so that'll give you a little bit of perspective for tonight. His installations, such as Galaxies, presented in New York and at the 2009 Venice Biennale, and Cloud Cities, designed for exhibitions in Germany, such as at the Hamburger Bahnhof in Berlin, and installed in many prominent museums and galleries in Tokyo, New York, Genoa, and Australia, are known for the ways in which they simultaneously construct and fill space through the geometric complexity of suspended interwoven filaments that challenge our notions of gravity, dimensionality, and occupation. The work is inspired not only by the material and geometric intricacies of things like spider webs, soap bubbles, and planetary orbits and clouds, but also by utopian thinkers such as Buckminster Fuller, whose radical conceptions of the universe linked architecture not only to engineering, but also to the macro scales of the cosmos and the micro scales of planet Earth. Tomás's works introduce us to expansive conceptions of space that enable us to experience, through their embodiment, worlds, let's say, at the astronomical or molecular scales that are seemingly beyond our own limits of everyday perception. Tomás's work has been included in many exhibitions worldwide, including 3 Venice Biennales in 2001, 2003, and 2009. The San Paulo Biennial in 2006, and many prominent museums and galleries, including the Barbican and Hayward Galleries in London, the Bonnesch Kunsthal in Stockholm, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Rome, and the Metropolitan Museum in New York. His work has also been included in over 100 solo and group exhibitions in prominent galleries around the globe. And is part of the permanent collections of many museums, including the Museums of Modern Art in San Francisco and New York, as well as Frankfurt and Luxembourg. Tomás, as I said, is both an architect and an artist. He studied architecture at the National University in Buenos Aires, and in addition to doing graduate work in art and architecture in Frankfurt and at the IUAV in Venice, Italy. He's lectured at many institutions, and just beyond kind of our normal gallery talks, has also been part of events such as the Tate Climate Change Symposium in London and the International Astronautical Congress in Glasgow. I'm very happy that Tomás was able to join us from Berlin today. Tonight's talk is going to be a little bit of an experiment, and I'm going to hand it over to Tomás. Please join me in welcoming Tomás Saraceno.
Well, thank you for coming. Such a, you know, when I listen, what I have been doing, I don't know if it's true, but anyway. Yeah. No, the thing is, like, when they invite me here, you know, it's a little, the reference Buckminster Fuller here, and actually there are so many people who have inspired me, and one of them, I think, is John Powell. I mean, let's put it that way, maybe always, you know, make it a little bit more dynamic also. Let's say, like, if you have a question during the presentation, I think so for John and for me, would be fine also to stop it there and then answer the question and make it a little bit more informal. And also when, you know, it's like somehow I start to get tired to listen to myself, kind of the same thing. This is what I say, you know, it's like wonderful to have other people who also, you know, take it more like kind of a workshop or something which is not so well organized, maybe. And we can dive maybe to territories which I don't know yet, maybe the answer, but, you know, we could try to construct here together. And the thing is, like, what I was at ISU, where I met Alexander Van Dijk also, maybe he will give us some words also, but I was granted with a European space kind of scholarship to come up and study at NASA Ames in Mountain View. This was back in 2009, and was kind of a 3 months very intensive program. I think so. I was the only artist between 120 engineers, which was a kind of a challenge by itself. But between among them, I met John. And then, you know, when I got the invitation here, I said, well, that's a beautiful, maybe moment. Everything came late. It would be beautiful to have in the program, but I'm so glad that he's here today. Does it mean maybe the idea that I said, like, John, why you don't come up and then show us a little bit of the program? I visited him yesterday, and then, you know, maybe it's a start to kind of a collaboration also. It also shows a little bit the spirit of how it works, and maybe, you know, take it from there. And then I hope so to dive more into conversation with him and with any of you in the future. I think we welcome John Powell.
Hello, if I walk away from the mic, can people still hear me? Yes. Because I will. Even if I try real hard not to, I will be over there, I'll be over here, it just happens. Just think of me as the opening act for Thomas. So just for something entirely different, we're talking about space architecture, getting to space. And we're kind of the other guys. Everybody knows NASA, that's the big space agency, the European Space Agency. Some folks have probably even heard of some of the new guys coming out. You know, Burt Rutan and Richard Branson, the billionaire, building spaceships to go to space. Well, we're the other guys. We've been at this for about 35 years now as an independent space program out in Sacramento. And we're actually all over the world now. We have people in Australia and Austria and Germany working on the program. But we're doing it completely different. The way we get to space now is you sit on the largest pile of explosives known to man, and you light a match to it. And then 6 minutes later, you're in space. That's because we're starting from Kansas. You know, if you had an ocean ship, you know, a big cargo vessel, and you got to get it to England, and you put your seaport in Kansas, you would have a problem. We think it's fundamental to the architecture how we get to space is the problem, not necessarily the rocket ship. We think that the spaceport shouldn't be on the ground. On the ground, that's like putting it at the bottom of the ocean or a seaport in Kansas. We think you need to put the spaceship or the spaceport right at the edge of space. So what you end up with is your port, your city, literally a city that's floating at the edge of space. Now, this is completely nuts. But we've been completely nuts and working on it for 35 years, and we're just about to pull it off. So I'd like to kind of show you what we've done, the parts and pieces of all this. This whole project is called ATO, for Airship to Orbit. Now, because we want to do away with the rocket altogether. You know, you see Burt Rutan with the Spaceship One, you know, they carry it up to 50,000 feet and then fire it off. So you use a very small spacecraft. Well, what if you carry it higher and higher? At what point can you do away with the rocket altogether? So how this works, I want you to think about a balloon. Now you have a balloon floating at the top of the atmosphere. You know, some big research balloons. Not very interesting, just kind of floating there. Well, what if you pushed it? Well, now you have a spaceship you can push around. So what if you put a little electric engine on it, a little ion thruster on it? Well, now you have a balloon that you can kind of drive around up there. It's still kind of interesting. Doesn't get you to space, because the space got to go fast. You got to go Mach 24. You know, it's not just getting up there high. Well, what if instead of a balloon, you gave it a wing shape? Well, if you went faster with your engine, you'd go a little higher. You get into where the air's a little thinner, a little less drag. And then what if you went a little faster and climbed a little higher? How far can you take that idea? The answer is, I have no idea. But that's what we're trying to do. Slowly, literally, instead of going to space in 6 minutes riding the explosion, we're like the steamship crossing the Atlantic, slowly chugging away for 9 days until we get there. But we're going to slowly spiral out over 9 days. Dude, there's lots of completely impossible things to do this. One thing we discovered is that if you build a giant airship on the ground and you try to launch it up to do it, it just doesn't work. You end up like a rocket that needs 3 stages. You need a 3-part architecture to get you there. You have this airship here. It's a big V-shaped airship. And that gets you off the ground, but that airship will never get to orbit. If you have an airship that's big enough and light enough and a gossamer structure enough to reach orbit, it can never survive in the lower atmosphere. So it goes to the edge of space, right at the top of the atmosphere at 140,000 feet. This is what makes it all happen. We call this the dark sky station, because it's a station, like a space station, but instead of in orbit, it's floating at 140,000 feet at the top of the atmosphere. And literally, it's our city floating at the edge of space. And from there, you have this big guy. This is another airship. This is an airship that's 6,000 feet, over a mile long. It's a big inflated gossamer structure. And that's the one that lives at the top of the atmosphere. It never comes down. It's built here. It flies from there and spirals out to orbit. Now, when we first started this, we identified about 11 completely impossible things about why this won't work. And that didn't bother us. And it didn't bother us because 35 years ago we didn't know any better. There's only about 3 impossible things left. And now that we know better, those last 3 don't really bother us so much, because we got around the others. We think we can get around the next 3. Now this is the video that I think doesn't work. This is how I get you to space, but I can't program a VCR. Yep, that one won't work. That's basically an animation showing how all the 3 pieces go together. From the ground, the first airship, the atmospheric airship, then the big facility is a permanent manned facility at the edge of space, and then the large airship that goes up the rest of the way. But this isn't just an imagined thing. It's not just conception drawings. These are things we've actually been building and flying at nearly 200 test flights, again, for about 35 years. This is one of our little ascenders. This is a little guy. This is just 20 feet long. But it gives you the basic idea. It's a V-shaped airship. This is one of our little bit bigger ones. This is the Ascender 90. This is a 90-foot vehicle. Everyone's heard of those V-shaped UFOs that people see. You know, they report there's all kinds of UFO. There's actually 4 separate websites devoted to JP Aerospace convinced we're aliens. A few times our vehicles have been spotted, blurry pictures taken by hunters. It makes it into the papers. You know those V-shaped aliens? I kid you not, it's all us. We'll send in pictures of us in the hangar, standing next to it, going, hi, trying not to look like aliens. The papers won't print it. The alien story is a better story. But actually that's okay, because I do a lot of alien talk radio. And they buy more hats and t-shirts than any of the space people do. Essentially, they're a little, not quite all there, but they're really nice people. This is our big one. This one's a little bit bigger than a 747. It's just floating in the hangar there. You can see the people standing under it. That's one that we sold to the Air Force, and they used it and got seen by people. Again, it's not a classified program, but the blurry picture by the hunter is a better story. So this one's a little bigger than a 747. This is one of the biggest V's craft we've built so far. That's in our hangar in Sacramento. This is the smaller one, the 90-foot one, so you can see kind of how it gets mistaken by a UFO. This is it's just one of the ground lights shining on it, so the whole thing ends up glowing. Again, these are not our airships, these are our spacecraft. Then you have the second part, this city thing, the dark sky station. This is one of our early prototypes. This one's only about 25 feet across. It's just a carbon structure carried aloft by balloons. And that one flew up, that was about 10 years ago. Again, testing the concept. This was the end game of about 14 different configurations. We had circular balloons, round balloons, toruses, but then found that the 5-arm structure is the most stable. The stability is kind of everything for us. And that's our bigger one. That's a 70-foot station. Again, these early stations just had balloons on a truss rather than a single integrated arm coming out. this particular one, this carries an 8-foot rocket. I have some friends at NASA who said when we fly to space, we cheat. Because we don't have a big rocket from the ground. We take our little rockets flying up right to the edge, fire them over. So yeah, we go to space. But then, personally, I don't care if you use rubber bands to get to space. It's not cheating. This is the one we're building now. This is Dark Sky Station 3. Has the integrated arms, kind of like the Endgame one. This is another small one. It's about a 50-foot diameter one. This is kind of a view of the big Endgame. This is a 2-mile-across vehicle. Now, that may sound gigantic, but really inflated structures, you can do a lot more with size. You know, it's not like a bridge where it's a very complex, difficult thing. Most of this is hollow and inflated like a hot air balloon. And that's kind of like that's actually at the end of the animation that didn't work, what it looks like when it's actually floating up there. And that's our end game, our orbital ascender. To get that to work, so the folks more technical, you have to basically eliminate the drag. So we have forward drag reduction systems, kind of an advanced concept. And then you have hybrid electrochemical engines in the back that actually produce electricity while they're thrusting out. These are all very exotic technologies, but they're all technologies that we've actually done. We've actually fired. Our engines were on our 82nd test firing of them, and we're actually doing our next flight firing of them at 100,000 feet this summer. That's kind of a cutaway what it all looks like on the inside. This is another small one. We're building another 100-foot one. This is at our shop in Sacramento, and we're doing an envelope inspection. We always stop all the traffic out front, and we block the parking lot. That's the inside. You can kind of see, that's me. And this is the baby one. When I see this, I go, oh, that's so small. I hate going back to building these small vehicles again after building the big guy. This is one of the truss structures. This is 120 feet long, and it weighs about 18 pounds.
Huh? Is this Air Force funded, or how is this funded?
Actually, I get that at the end. We're all privately funded.
Okay.
We did sell the one to the Air Force, and we paid the rent for 2 years with that, which is great. But we actually don't do that very often.
So is this one, was that carbon fiber?
Yeah, this all the poles are carbon fiber. The small poles we buy, the large ones we do all our own molding. And then there's these aluminum tab connectors. So you'll see in a lot of our other vehicles, they're all made out of carbon poles, because this gets then torn apart when we're done flying the airship. And then it gets made into a dozen other smaller vehicles, and those get torn apart and get made into an airship again. They're kind of our tinker toys. So it's like the flights that are coming up in April, a lot of the equipment is flown 24 times on two dozen different vehicles in different ways as we just build up new things. And because we're not a big funded program, after each flight, everything's got to get torn down because all the parts get built up into the next flying contraption. Now this one is not part of ATO. It's not part of airship orbit directly. This is our 2 balloons on a stick. It started out as a dare. Lockheed, and I knew the vice president of Lockheed. We were at a conference together, and we were talking. I'm the crazy guy they always invite, because it's always fun to have me. They all shake their heads. But that's okay. And they had spent $3.2 billion with a B on their high-altitude airship. And when they were about 5 years from flying it, when we were having a drink together, and I told them I can build an airship for the leftover parts that I had in the shop that could beat their $3 billion airship. And there are several things that didn't work on the airships, like propellers that could work at the edge of space at 100,000 feet. The Air Force spent 20 years before bailing on the project. NASA spent about 15 years and finally came up with one. Our propellers beat theirs by about 3%. And finally, we actually built the thing. And we thought the jig was up, because 2 weeks before we were going to fly, Lockheed announces they're going to fly their big airship. Say the big $3 billion one flew to 30,000 feet and then had what they called the descent anomaly into the ground. They would not say it crashed, although they sent a news copter over to it and had this very sad picture. No people were on board, so nobody was hurt. Of this airship torn apart, strewn over, with this propeller beating on this poor tree branch over and over again. And the lucky guys are good guys, they're smart guys. Unfortunately, we flew 2 weeks after that, and so the press was saying $30,000 airship beats $3 billion airship. Because we have this, the tandem, so you get a feel for how big it is. See the propellers there and the balloon holding it up. Again, it's kind of 2 balloons on a stick. But it actually did the same thing as the big, giant, 300-foot long thing that looks like a Goodyear blimp does. Carries the same payload, flies a little faster, but it's so cheap it's almost disposable. And that's just after liftoff. Again, to give you scale, those propellers are about 6 feet long. The whole truss structure, in fact, this truss structure was out of the airship, and it's out of some of our high racks that carry some of our ping pong balls. We fly a lot of ping pong balls. This is about 30 feet across from there to there. These balloons start out about 14 feet across, but they get about 60 feet across. So at altitude, the balloon will be here to here, contacting the balloon from here to here. And the way this works is as it's going up, the air flows around the balloons, creates a low pressure zone under here. You get the distance right, the low pressure zones combined, it locks the balloon in place. You ever seen, at Sears, they put the beach ball in front of a vacuum cleaner, and the beach ball would kind of stay right in place there? It's the exact same thing on a giant scale. That way we don't need to rigidly hold the balloons. You can have just literally a couple of balloons hanging on a truss, and it performs like they're bolted in place. And that's a view from up top. That's sitting at 95,000 feet. See, the balloon's gotten pretty big there. And we set the world altitude record for airships with this one. The previous one was from the Army program. They only spent $100 million on theirs. And they flew about 6 miles lower than this. And they got to that altitude, and their balloon ruptured, and they lost the entire vehicle. They don't know what happened to it. It just vanished. It was gone. We actually got ours back in the shop. We've taken it apart, and it's going in the new Ascender 90 vehicle. And that's a view from looking up the truss of the balloon. You say that you have the high altitude propellers, the whole truss structure, video antenna. These are our parachute baskets. At the peak altitude, when we're all done with the mission, we went flew up, we did some turns, got everything good, then we released the balloons. Actually, the one balloon got up to peak altitude, and we pushed it higher and higher, and it finally popped, so we released the back balloon. And then the parachutes, these are like kid baskets in front of their tricycles. When the air, because you're in vacuum up there, if you put out the parachute too soon, the parachute just falls and tangles up with stuff. You put it out too late, you fall supersonically, and it just rips off. The mission control guys, we have an old converted news van that operates our mission control. It was always for years. Some guys are good at it. They'll be looking at the pressure, they're looking at the day, looking at the set rate to put that parachute out right at the right time. A moment late, tore off. A moment too soon, it just falls and tangles. We just put these foam baskets on there with holes in the bottom of it. So now, as soon as there's enough air blowing through to blow out the parachute, it comes out by itself. So we don't have to do anything, and they come out perfectly every time. Okay, now this should be some video of the tandem in flight. Oops. We can make it go. Propellers actually go a lot faster, just that's the camera effect that you get with that oscillation there.
Can you also regulate the altitude, or does it just go up and down?
Oh, not on this first one. The next generation has valves on the balloon, so we go up and hold, and we're carrying a liquid helium dewar, so that we can also then recline or descend. This first one we kept as simple as we could, so we just went up, did some turns, and brought the thing down.
What are the ping pong balls for?
Oh, that's my favorite part about all of this, is the ping pong balls. Ping pong balls is actually half of what we do. Airship to orbit is the one half. Ping pong balls in space is actually the most important thing we do. I really. Oh, okay, let's see if I can make this one work. Now this is the launch. One thing about launching balloons, it's always a problem with balloons. You bring the team out to the desert, you've paid the hotel room, you rented all the U-Hauls, you're out there and the wind is blowing and you can't fly. You spent all your sponsor money, all the t-shirt money for the past 6 months, and you're dead in the water. So we actually stopped flying for 6 months, about 5 years ago, to solve the wind problem. And we came up with 2 ways. One, passive, that we still deal with wind, but can still launch a balloon. Because balloons you usually can't launch out above about 5 knots. That's it. We did a launch during a project we did for Samsung. We did the kickoff for the Galaxy 3 phone, 2 phone. And we did a launch in 45-knot winds. People couldn't stand up, and the cameraman couldn't stand up. But we were still able to launch the balloon hands-off. This is this bagged launch system that we use. And so the tandem, because it's 2 balloons on a stick, each balloon is in one of these big bags. So you'll see that working. And this is just the launch of tandem out of the launch bags. We put cameras around everywhere. When we make mistakes, then we want to see exactly what we did.
How fast does the wind blow?
This we had a dead calm day, which was nice. And the guys at Lockheed called me, they're kind of upset and saying, well, it's not a real airship. I think, yeah. But it goes just as high, carries the same weight, goes just as fast, can maneuver just as much. Who cares? And they'll start talking to me again, I'm sure. Okay, ping pong balls. This is the whole other half we're going to do. Why fly? What are ping pong balls all about? You know, we're going to have a city at the edge of space, and we need people to go there. We need people, engineers, we need artists, we need people that are excited about going there. And you know, a lot of folks will say, well, we're going to build these spaceships, and people can ride on them as tourists. You know, at the end, they're going to invite people to come with them. We founded our goal 35 years ago to build a space program regular people can be a part of. You know, we hold the world record for airships. We've made propellers that the industry couldn't make that were impossible. We've done quite a bit of tech that supposedly can't be done. And we're actually just regular people. These are people from all walks of life. We have a retired Air Force sergeant, some clerks from the state, we have some computer programmers. Everybody that you could imagine shows up on the weekends and on the evenings to build these things. But the best part is the ping pong balls. Because instead of waiting for the end game to bring people involved, we want people to be involved right now. We want people to ride on everything we build. We want people to come in and fly with us. But people can't ride on our stuff yet. They can next year. But this year, if you sat on the tandem, it's not going anywhere. But they can fly ping pong balls. You know, we used to fly student experiments. It's hard to get somebody else's stuff integrated into your stuff. But if you make everybody put in a ping pong ball, then instead of doing 2 student experiments a year, on each flight you can open up the box, pour 100 in, close it up, fly it. And that's what these are. We call them PONSATs, for ping pong ball satellite. And we've had, this April we'll be flying the 10,000th PONSAT. There's been about 50,000 students all over the world, just regular people from all walks of life, participate and fly with us. And you think a ping pong ball, what can you do in a ping pong ball? That's not much space to do any real science in. This is one from Sweden. There's 2 computers, a data logger, and 17 onboard experiments. It's a full atmospheric lab. And this is a real ping pong ball. About 1 in 5 are like this, very sophisticated, doing a lot of real science. We did a lot of cancer research at the University of St. Petersburg in Belgium. They were found at 100,000 feet. You can do accelerated radiation studies, really, really cheap. So they're doing a lot of samples. We would have done it, just put it in any kind of box, but they flew them in the ping pong balls, which was great. Sometimes they put just a marshmallow. That's actually my favorite. You put a mini marshmallow in, say you're in kindergarten, you put a mini marshmallow in, it puffs up in the vacuum and freeze dries. And it's a great science fair experiment. I had a bunch of 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, first graders. And they were local, so I took the ping pong balls back, and they flew all gummy bears. And I thought, you know, the teacher made them do hypotheses, you know, and get back what they did with the gummy bears. But I thought, well, they're not, it's more of an inspiration thing. You know, you get to see the video of the curve of the earth and the ping pong ball. But, you know, it's not really science in flying gummy bears. Well, they taught me a lesson that day. Old girl in the back raised her hand and says, why is my gummy bear rough? And I told the gummy bear, well, it's outgassing. You know, when you're in vacuum, particles of trapped gas make their way out. And we ended up having a 45-minute discussion about outgassing, a pretty sophisticated phenomenon with 6-year-olds. And they all got it. You know, I know engineers, engineers who work for me, that don't have that gut intuitive notion of that phenomenon as all these 6-year-olds have. And then a cool thing happened about 3 years ago. Oh, there's some concepts. One of the guys got a thermometer, drilled a hole in it, and put the ping pong ball through the thermometer. So it didn't quite fit in the ping pong ball, but we flew it anyway. I made a comment on our blog that I love the ping pong balls with racing stripes on. And an amazing thing happened. They all come now with this gorgeous artwork all over the ping pong balls. You get smiley faces, aliens. Had one last year with the entire Harry Potter scene painted out with all the new characters and everything. It's just amazing. There's a smiley face concept, but now they all come. They're doing science and they're doing art all at the same time. And we don't charge anything for the ping pong balls because we just fly them on research missions. We started flying. Our first one we flew 13. I thought, wow, that's a lot of student experiments. That's more than NASA does in 5 years of student experiments. Now we do 1,000 at a time. Say we're just about to break 10,000 this April, and that's more student experiments flown than all the space programs in the entire world combined ever. There's some more. This one's from England. He put his little astronaut guy inside. We thought, no, so we got to put him outside just to get the shot. And then we have little cubes. There's guys, there's researchers that can't put in something round. It must be square. So if you're going to fly a ping pong ball, it's free. As many as you can fly. If you want a box, they cost you $300. I'm going to show one more and then turn it over to Thomas. Oops, wrong way. We did about 2,000 concepts from Japan after the tsunami. And they all flew. It was all from the Fukushima area. It was all from the emergency shelters. They built the concepts and sent them to us, and they all put messages of hope. It was kind of sad because they had messages to their lost loved ones that they flew. And then after they landed, they get them all back after the mission with a DVD showing the video, onboard video, and some data sheets, how high, how fast, the certificate that they flew. And they actually planted this big orchard all around, or field around the city there with the sunflowers that had flown. And this is a sunflower that flew, or from a seed that had flown on one of the PongSat missions. And that's what we want to happen to our millions of PongSat.
Well done. Every time I'm reading the book of John and reading again, I say like, damn, hell, I read his mind or he read my mind, it's like kind of, many things got mixed, but it's a kind of, for me, an endless source of inspiration as many other people which are around. And what should I say? I think so. It's beautiful because I think so. I have to talk only 10 minutes or 15 minutes. That was a big trick, but but we will go through. I think so. Some of the project, and I think so. I will try to. Yeah, to maybe try to establish a conversation maybe with some of the things that John was doing in this project. I will not show it, but I don't know if this light which is in front of me, if we can bring it a little bit off, would be great. But yeah, this is Bolivia, no? Is it possible to turn down a little bit this light? I don't know if it's possible. Then if you sleep, I don't see you while you sleep. But thank you. Yeah, this is one of the nice things is the flattest surface on Earth. Now is the second biggest resource of lithium also. This means when you go there with a compass, I didn't have the GPS, you always get lost somehow. And you know, the north is in one here and here and here, and then there is no kind of a very fixed point of orientation. And I think so. I mean, we were there like in most of the days. It's like this. This means the horizon get completely blurred. Then there is a moment which is like this. And I think so. But the more biggest surprise was a little bit what had happened at night. And we didn't have the cameras. I mean, when we went there with 27 cameras, we were doing a time lapse, measuring and recording the clouds. But as you can imagine, during the night, it's kind of pretty amazing. I mean, you see all the reflection and the intensity of the stars is like so bright as it up is down. It's pretty high, it's kind of 3,000 and something meter high. And the other crazy thing is like when you step, you know, you kind of start to see all the stars kind of wrinkled around you. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, I hope so the next project will be. But basically, one of the things which I think so, when John was thinking, and you know, a little bit, my background had been in architecture. Every time, you know, it's like there is kind of this relationship which all the time I try to relate. You know, when I, you know, the kind of style of architecture. You say, well, this is Gothic, Romantic, and so on. I like to think, you know, to art like an alto stratus city, cumulonimbus city, and this means kind of maybe kind of imagine a little bit how it might be looking future cities. This means there are some which go from low clouds to high clouds, like the cumulonimbus, and then, you know, funny enough, you know, I've been speculating for a while, saying like, hey, how will be happening? And then, you know, now I'm doing this residency at MIT, and I'm working with somebody there, but she kind of, because they're doing this kind of cloud chamber. It's not really like they're doing this chamber that they put the fluids and they try to understand how the atmosphere is kind of pretty related of this experiment they do in the ground of what had happened with the currents up there. And I challenged, and you know, I was asking like by curiosity, I say like, what if it happened? You know, it's like a future city are like clouds, and each of them are kind of. Let me see some of the images. This is another thing. Let me something like this, no? Like each of it is, this is a collage, this is not real. I will tell you the distinction between when it's something it's real or not. But you know, which shape it might get a future flying city, which might be like kind of aggregation of, you know, each of these you can think is a house. And they combine one to each other. But if you don't have a net that would hold each of these spheres together, which shape in the future, let's say, future flying cloud cities it might get? It might kind of, the geometry might resemble what we see today as the clouds. And, you know, the person will start to think and say, well, you know, we have now started to do kind of a small experiment because it's a big tank which all the time spins, which is kind of the rotation of the Earth, and then they put some liquid and they say, now we got like a chemistry department, a kind of a neutral buoyancy particle, and then, but they were running only 1 or 2 particles. And I said, what about if you put, I don't know, like 1,000 of these particles in this thing? And then she, you know, she got kind of interested to try to understand of, you know, how the shape of this agglomeration of future cloud city might resemble, which, you know, it's kind of get me enthusiastic on this idea. Well, and then, you know, it's like, there are a few things I will go back and forth. Some of the things that will be a little bit more technical, some not. I will try to explain later. But you know, many of the things, let's put it that way, when we look at it, it's like this kind of a basic kind of modular construction, right? Where it kind of is an aggregation of things. And then it's very simple to build it also. This is what I think, so I share pretty much with John. You know, it's like a hands-on and try to do the things. Does it mean that, let's say, when I look at one of these, imagine like it's one of these, right? It's like a one module, a little bit blowing up in another scale, and how might people being able to be up there? Well, this is kind of something which could be also interesting into the inside a little bit. Well, this is what at Berkeley with Elizabeth Thomas. I'm here, and this was part of the things. We usually, you know, many of the are kind of plants which are inside, which are the family of the bromelaceae, and they are like Tillandsia, which are these plants who live completely from the air. This means it's kind of a good candidate to have future flying gardens. So this is the same kind of family of plants. It's the same family of the ananas. This is another thing which I think so for John would be interesting. It's kind of a foil, which is kind of a Japanese foil, which was produced by Torai, but then, you know, it's kind of getting complicated also to kind of produce it in a bigger ship, but so far I think so is the better foil for keeping a balloon, much better than Mylar. You can step on one of these balloons, 2 persons, it will not pop. It's free of wrinkles and will last very long. This means one of the things which I said with John, why we don't try to send this balloon up there and see you know, how they might react, and I think so, yeah. And then also, you know, some of these spheres, you know, we can start to send gardens and hopefully in the future people there also. But one, let me put, I always think, you know, it's like this was back a collage when it was in 2001, I was doing when I was a student at the Städelschule, and all the time, you know, when I moved back from Berlin to from Argentina to Berlin, something which I was missing was always the, you know, like a bad weather, like cloudy. And I think so one of the things which I shared with, then I was in St. Petersburg. Usually in Argentina, what we do when the plane is landing, still people used to clap, right? It's like where it was successful. But in St. Petersburg, I was like for 3 weeks, and there was no sign of sun, you know, cloudy. And then as soon from St. Petersburg, the plane took off and then crossed the level of the cloud, people start to clap because they see the sun. And I said, wow, that's really kind of my feeling when I've been in Europe for quite a while. In, you know, the winter in Berlin is very, very cloudy. Does it mean, what about to have a kind of a floating plaza up there above the level of the clouds? You don't need to be so high sometimes, you know, when you get lower clouds, it might be there. Does it mean, again, in one of the spheres, you know, something might be able to happen? And this is kind of a small experiment. Well, small is pretty big in Italy. What we do is like a kind of pressurize all the lower part of this room. Does it mean there is a lot of codependency of the people when entering the lower part and the people which are standing on the upper part? This is kind of a nightmare of regulation and policy and how people might be able to, because you are standing on kind of a half of a millimeter thickness foil. Also, you know, it's like a, for example, when somebody forget the 2 doors open, down, you know, you fall down in kind of in maybe 30 seconds, and then everybody got together. It's like kind of, it's a pretty nightmare. And the other thing is like, it's not only 1 layer, but 3 layers. This meaning kind of, I cannot get a better analogy like a lasagna, but but somehow, you know, imagine the permission that I should get, because let me get it. Maybe I get a drawing, no? Because what happened when somebody's standing on the upper floor, then he squeezed the other floor. When somebody's standing on this floor, squeeze the other one. This means the security, the route of escape for the fire policeman, that in less than 3 minutes you have to reach the gate to get out, was very complicated, because the space, it might disappear as you access it. No, the space open as you access, no? And as heavy you are, it might fold and unfold. For me, it's kind of pretty much like kind of a science fiction movie, you know, because let's say, when there is a lot of pressure, you know, all the 3 foils are together. Does it mean there is no space? No? All the 3 are together. Then you enter with your body, and then you push the foil down there, and then you open the space. While you move into the space, it follows you. Kind of is pretty economic somehow. Well, and then, you know, there is this drawing of Paul Davies of how this kind of parallel universe it might form. That is more cosmological. I was with Alan Guth at MIT also talking a little bit. And the other thing which, well, that's a model that I did also in 2001. Nobody will believe that this will be possible. And then when I see this picture, I say, well, you know, it's like that's something which made me happy somehow to see still. And let me get, well, it's just regular PVC, yeah. But what we did a lot is, the material is not so special, but what we did is a lot of tests. You know, stretching, how many people, and here and there. And then the other thing also is like, we'll show you some slide later, but we wanted to make it fly. Then this means fill it up with hydrogen, one of the chambers, and then turn it up in kind of a floating island. But the other thing is like a very simple, you know, the theory of Einstein of relativity, you know, it's like depending on the mass of the body, might bend space and time. And this is what it really pretty much happened. You know, it's like when 3 or 4 people are kind of in the same point, it's kind of getting very, very difficult to escape from it because you bend it really, really much, and from there, you know, this is why the instructions are getting up there. People say, don't get together so close each other because you might not escape to this kind of black social hole. You know, it's like something like this. But it's like what I like is like yeah. Well, there are many, yeah, it's sometimes getting very, very wild, you know. It's like, and it's also kind of pretty much unpredictable because sometimes the pressure is pretty high. Does it mean it kind of get much more stable the way how you move? Here you don't see so much the people down, but don't forget you're like a 60 meter, depending on the pressure that you have in each level, high. Yeah, here you get down. Well, here people from down, here from the top. For example, this guy is getting in trouble to go out. You see, he cannot escape. I mean. That we were struggling a lot because he have to wait that 2 or 3 people go to the back of the room and then he go high enough and then he can get out. You know, it's like, oh, that's a little bit complicated. But you know, it's like going back again to the idea of, let's say when John is talking about all this kind of 3-stage architecture, there is one thing, you know, very simple, but you have a normal balloon, a helium balloon from Berthe, not with Myler, the one we can say, you know, you put it under the water and get small, you release it up. As John was showing, no, it kind of grow. Now, there is one thing in an airship, which is called always the balloonette. You know, you don't want to use helium, and this means when you go up and down, maybe I get too technical, but, you know, it will be beautiful to think kind of an architecture or kind of a space, which depend on the level where the airship it is. You know, you have all the time naturally this chamber that shrink, get small, and then get big and get small, depending on the altitude where they are. You know, and if you think that this is a balloonette inside an airship, you know, naturally you might have, you know, from an auditorium that it kind of, or a place to walk very stiff because the pressure is very high, to something which is completely low. No, does it mean it's something depending on the altitude that you are standing. Also, the space it might change also with, and it's also based up on the well. This was at the beginning, you know. We always were afraid that this will close up on top of you, will not be able to breathe, but at the end it was not, it worked. Well, I will start to go quickly because we have to finish up and have some questions, no? This, I mean, I will try to go, I have 10 minutes more or 5 or, oh, okay. Well, if you get, but yeah, I mean, then also like, now at MIT we were start to speculating, you know, there is this thing which is a solar distillator that usually sailing boats have, and then, you know, the same piece have been built with the idea that later we might be able to put it outside, and then we thought that, you know, it would be interesting to make a kind of a video performance on the Maldives island. You know, they said 15, 20 years, better time will disappear, and then we start to build up like kind of a, it's the same dimension, it's the same piece which is in Italy, you know, that just only maybe change the context. You can kind of widen a little bit the idea of the relationship that it could establish with that. But you can drink water, also desalinize the water, and so forth and so on. Yeah, these are just like with some friends. Well, maybe, you know, it's like I've been for 10 or 12 or 10 years, not really invited into architectural school. I was much more into the art scene, let's say, and still today. But, you know, I don't know what happened. Suddenly now the architects are getting interesting. I don't know what happened, but anyway, it's interesting. You know, one of the things, you know, is like you can think like these kind of spheres that I'm trying to build are kind of a 3-dimensional wheel of a bicycle. Let me see if I get here. Well, the hub in the middle is the one which all the tensor are getting to there. One thing which is, you can see here, the spaces are getting close also in between them. And depending on the tension that you put of all the spokes, which kind of 360 degrees, you kind of get a very pretty rigid structure. I mean, one of the things what I'm trying to do all the time is like, you know, Buckminster Fuller thought that if you make a sphere, it's called Cloud9 project, of 1.2 miles diameter with 1 degree of temperature between the inside and outside, the sphere will float with a concrete wall, aluminum wall and everything, just by 1 degree of temperature, right? Maybe I get very quickly, well, people can enter here and well, this is a little bit, let me see. Well, this is also something which students have been working with me. You know, I'm trying to write a script about saw bubbles, how they connect one to each other. This we try to skip. Well, here is like we are thinking how also to concentrate a little bit solar energy in the center of a hub with a flexible solar panel. This means, you know, the part is transparent, part is milder, and then, you know, you get the sun through and then bounce back to the core where you kind of have a better efficiency of the sun. These are the things. Well, this is something a solar chimney I would like to get inside there. This other part of inspiration. Usually John Paul is there, but then he's here and he was talking. The other way is like also how you can collect water also. This is a barrel that they use in the desert of Atacama, and in 12 days they collect 200 liters of water just through the change of condensation. And it's in the middle of the desert. This means the upper part also could be interesting to have a kind of this sail where you could kind of fish water from the clouds and bring it down. Something with maybe John also we can start to work out. This is a little bit more complicated. It's always these pressurized spaces. I mean, you can imagine when somebody forget the door open down, you could listen from the show, close the door, because it's everything collapsed, right? It's like, that's and get squeezed there is a little bit more complicated. But I thought I would have it, the solar thing I wanted to show you, that I left there. Anyway, we will go back. I put the images together, but part of this is a thing which was at the Met, a little bit, and this is called the Valine wire geometry. Maybe something is also interesting for John, because you know, it's like there are these two physicians from Dublin who have written the pursuit of perfect packing. I thought this is a great thing. And this is kind of a Valine wire geometry, which somehow, you know, is like the maximum volume and the less surface of how to put spheres together in a kind of limited spaces. Does it mean the Ponsat? It could get a little bit more, it's the more efficient, you know, and based on, and there is nobody who can beat still this relationship. Does it mean, what is very important, you know, when you use lighter than air vehicles, which is what John and me are doing, a difference of heavy than air vehicles, right? Lighter than air is a vehicle which fly with a gas which is lighter than air, somehow. And I don't know if it was too technical, John, if we will be able to follow, or should I kind of insist in some point, but otherwise you just tell me if something is getting wrong. But anyway, you know, I've been building this kind of configuration. I mean, because it's very important to have a lot of volume and a little surface, and the sphere is the best relationship we can give you. Now, when you start to put many spheres together, let's say that each of these spheres is 1 mile or 300 meters, how they can aggregate one to each other, and how, you know, like from a single individual, maybe house or a city, they can be combined one to each other. And this way it's resulting of this kind of, I want to make it fly, but then, you know, this, and, you know, and here, you know, each work, you know, somehow also that's what we start to work with Alexander, a little bit start to understand that this might be a solar clock, and how the light might be reflected around the skyscraper, like the sign of the skyscraper. And then also if Don Petty, one of my favorite astronauts on top of International Space Station, might be seeing the reflection, and at what time the orbit might coincide, that we might be able to see him, and he see us and we see him through the reflection of the thing. And then we start to work here. We wrote to Don Petty, but we didn't get yet an answer. I think so. He got down. But yeah, I mean, and then again, no, it's like a kind of the position of the mirror kind of start to respond to different kind of sensibility. You know, I like also to kind of, you know, you see this and you see again the Bolivia image, no, the Uyuni, try to put the skies down where it happens sometimes. Well, that is some of the images where the Central Park is up, you know, and there's more a capability of trying to perceive many images at the same time, and how you through this kind of new environment, are able or capable to move through these. And the other is also, I'm kind of forcing myself to talk more about architecture, but I don't know if you want this. But you know, it's like, let's say if you have a kind of a huge city down there, it might be always under the shadow. This means, you know, with a laser, we always playing like kind of how the sun, it might reach also in the lower part. And, you know, you can, here we are cooking a chicken in a solar balloon. This means you can do this kind of solar cooking and well, I'm getting a bit slow. Okay, to go back to the idea of solar balloon, because this is something also like a solar balloon there is a little bit of a difference of John was doing. He was using hydrogen and helium to lift up the things. And there is another way, which also you can fly only with the solar energy. It does mean, in this case, the balloon, it goes up only with the temperature difference that is produced by the sun. You know, funny enough, when I was at NASA Ames, you know, when I was, you know, all these guys who put people in the moon and left and right, I said, like, look, for $300, 2 people, a weekend, you can put a man into the air. And I could not believe it. It's like, you know, there is kind of this trade of technology somehow. There's something very, very simple. I mean, of this type of balloon who can put a man in the air, it's just regular polyethylene plastic bag, tape it with scotch and nothing else. And this is a small ring of a bike. And this, I mean, it's really like and there I think so there are only at the moment there are 7 or 8 around the world which ever have been built since we are on the planet Earth. This, I mean, yes, in a smaller scale, but who can lift a man in the air, they're very, very little. And it's a very small community. This, I mean, you know, it's like I know, I mean, we were speculating with John, you know, if it's already one of his vehicles is 2 miles long, imagine if you want to do it and fly it only with solar energy, it might be maybe 15 miles long. You know, the factors have to be, but something very beautiful is just pure sun, and to launch it also might be a nightmare. But anyway, it's interesting to think. Well, there are technical things of how to improve aerogel and put it up there, and how you can, well, less than 1% of bags are recycled. It costs more to recycle a bag than to produce a new one. The hardest cost behind the bag recycling. It costs $4,000 to process and recycle 1 ton of plastic bag, which then can be sold to a commodity market of 32. There we are. And then it come up this project, which is a little bit maybe like the Pong set of John, but somehow what we try to do is build, I think it's in Colombia, Hugo Santamaria, he called it, and he named it a Museo Aerosolar. This means a kind of a flying museum, which somehow you can, this is when you get inside, and then this fly also, no? With the sun only. There is nothing, no hydrogen, no helium, again. You have to fly very early in the morning, but one thing also, you know, is like there is no really scale of it, you know, and that's something which for me is like how we can slow down the scale to somehow, you know, this is a perfect example of how I would love to build a flying city, you know, crowdsourcing, you know, people like donate the plastic bag, they come the week and they tape it, they come up, they see it flying, it's kind of reusing material, you know, have so many kind of properties, which for me is unbelievable. It's kind of, and then many people start by themselves. There is a group now in Helsinki, he saw the instruction, they start to do it by themselves. There is another group in Cuba, there is another group in Germany, and one in that, and everybody kind of start to do it by their own. And at the same time, sometimes we meet each other, and then we tape it, and then it's kind of keep growing, keep growing. This, I mean, you know, I'm all the time thinking, look, how we can scale down somehow a way somehow to kind of start to build something together, you know, like, oh, you know, for example, how, you know, it's like all the time now being in Silicon Valley, and say like, hey, how we can turn from cloud computing to cloud citizenship, you know, and try to make this kind of gap. If we learn so much also on the way, and you know, it's like I don't want to get too much into politics and so on and so forth. You know, my family have been forced to live not in Argentina during dictatorship, military dictatorship for 11 years. This means they were allowed to come back to Argentina when I was 11 and so on. You know, I got married with a Serbian, my wife, and then she could not be in Europe. This means there's a lot of things going on, beside also how bad the distribution of land with a, limited resources that we're having, how, have been done with a kind of set in mind. And I think so, today, internet, whatever, navigation, or, the process also of building a Wikipedia, how amazing it is, why we cannot build also and rethink also the way how we build our own cities. These are the Walker Center. Well, here we are trying to bring it down, the balloon. This is something which I'm looking to start to do with John. I don't know if I will go through this project, but very quickly there was a proposal for a competition, usually architect, this was 2000 or 1999, to build a mobile clinic for prevent HIV in Africa, right? My father had been, through many, many years on working for the World Bank, and then going to every holiday. I was in Cabo Verde or Colombia or Guatemala visiting my father. And what it happened is it's always like a kind of a lack of knowledge of what is going on there. This means you can imagine the European Union arriving to a place, and then people, this is a taboo. They even don't talk about sex. But anyway, they come, the commission, they will say, well, they will meet up in the square, and then people run off because they don't talk even about sex, and you will teach them how to try to put a condom. It's like a kind of unbelievable thing. This means I only said why we don't do like a flying condom. very, very simple. This mean, imagine like people in a small truck saying, well, today we will talk about how to prevent, and nobody come to the square, nobody want to talk. But imagine come this huge flying condom flying from the air, reaching the village. Everybody will say, what the hell is this? And they will come to the square where they start to talk. They will, already you kind of generate a kind of a synergy, which somehow, then later, you can start to talk about something else. Well, then, by the way, you can prevent here and there. But I think so there is nobody, I mean, one of the big, the first collage I was doing also is using part of Ant Farm, no? Curtis is not here, I didn't manage to send him, but they're fantastic, no? Well, yeah. I will go quickly to well, this might be a little bit old now with the access to, there is a big capability, with HIP now, with the high altitude platform, how distribution over, network communication, you might be able also, I think so, here is John also, Powell, with some of his things, I don't know, I'm kind of trying to put all the things together. But maybe what I go very quickly is through the last project, which is a little bit kind of different, or I stop it here. What do we think? I go through this. It might break a little bit the flow of I mean, or at least to understand this in kind of another scale, maybe. And can maybe go back of Buckminster Fury was saying, it's like we are living on a spaceship Earth which spins around the sun. Does it mean this idea of a construction of a cloud city is also of how you frame it, right? You can always talk about galactic clouds and so on and so forth. This means the idea of clouds also could enlarge to kind of another dimension. And in this case, I was, there is this guy, Volker Springler, we visited him at Max Planck Institute, and what they do is the best simulation of the origin of the universe, which is called the Millennium Simulation. They got together many scientists, and always how they talk about this is called the cosmic web. How the universe have formed is the more precise simulation of how, and they keep actualizing. This means it's something which is very precise. Now, the best analogy that most of them have found all the time to try to explain the geometry of this universe is always related to a spider web, a three-dimensional spider web. Every time you find an article, you say, like, well, like a three-dimensional spider, or like a drops of water caught in a three-dimensional spider web. And I say, well, then I got invited, here we are. Well, then I got invited to the Venice Biennale in 2009. Let me put it that way. Oh, it's a bit mixed up, the things. And then I said, well, why we don't put it a spider inside a box? She might weave a web, we take out the spider, otherwise we'll vibrate too much the web, and then we scan it, and then somehow this will give us some sense of how this universe, geometrical universe, might have. Now, when you talk with an astrophysician, with arachnologists, they say, well, this is bullshit, because the spider web have nothing to do with a cosmic web, and then the other one back and forth. But what we find out is like when we, let me go through, well, this is Samuel Chockel, the person who is, till now, they always have, we'll go a little bit too quickly. Well, there we are. We are getting the Black Widow. There is a black market because it's not allowed to ship them. Anyway, you can buy them. You don't have to ask them to ship it through the weekend because otherwise they will get it in custom and here and there. Anyway, there we are. And then we put the Black Widow inside a box. Then she started to make the spinning of the web. And then we tried to scan it, you know, many different methods. We went to the hospital. They gave us 3 hours time. Anyway, and then start to talk with a lot of people about like how we might be able to read these lines. Now, this MRI have the resolution of this is here anyway. We're training with saw bubbles, but it's 0.6 of a millimeter. This is half a millimeter, and the thickness of a spider web is 1,000 times thinner. Does it mean there is a micro CT scan, but you know, to understand the geometry of a web, which have somehow this dimension, then you know we start to talk with a lot of university laboratories and here and there, and nobody have a technique even to scan this web. This means you know the stories can start to get more interesting because you know all the astrophysicians start to explain this geometry through a 3-dimensional spider web, but no on Earth have nobody even scanned a 3-dimensional spider web. This means this kind of complaint all the time, oh, this is similar to that one. At the same time, it's based on something which is kind of a myth also. You know, the same as what the universe is. You know, we know only 0.4% of what we are. There is this black matter, dark matter, we don't, that represent the 96%. We don't have even a name to put it. This means, you know, something which is very close to our house, in every corner, is less study or that the universe we know. Anyway, then we went to the Technical University in Darmstadt with the Institute of Photogrammetry. I proposed them to illuminate the web with a laser, and then we start to run all the section, no? Like very simple. There is a laser, and you can see exactly the intersection of the laser with the web. Then we put all this part together. Here's all the small segments of it. Then we start to build it digitally. This took us, I think so there were like 4 architects, 2 months working on it. We tried to run a script to try to follow the trajectories and see the nodes because we have to correct it. We didn't scan exactly every millimeter, every 3 millimeters. There was no way to do it. This is something of the things I'm trying to look forward with the people at MIT to optimize it. It'll be maybe the method. And the other nice thing also, before I forget, well, I just show you a little bit the construction now. Here's a little bit the way how we turn it then in 3D also, because one thing and I think so maybe we've got the time to get into more sociological meaning of Latour thinking, but you know, when you pull one of these threads, you know, this is connected, this node, it bifurcates in 2, then it bifurcates in 3, then in 4, then and so on. This means how much is the tension that you have to pull to this thread to keep in place the node in the space, how they are building. You know, we were thinking also, okay, we build it in rapid prototype and things like that, but it's, it's huge. 1 to 72 we wanted to build it. This means what we did is like we put all these lines, then we have all these points in space, and then we start to build it. And then we start to stretch. This means every time that you stretch one of these lines, you see exactly if this node, because you have a vertical nylon line, it was touching the line. This means we can keep somehow very precise in space every connection in between the things. Oh, it is a kind of a nightmare. But anyway, here is the web. What is nice is like also for photography, when you try to take a picture of spider web, it's so complicated because you can never illuminate it all at the same time. It's always kind of partial. But here you can get a valley and then get kind of a funnel tunnel where usually the Black Widow eat the prey. And anyway, then we got like now I'm kind of famous into the world of arachnologies because we are the first one who have ever scanned a 3-dimensional spider web. This means they have been written this was presented in the first Congress of Arachnology in Poland. There have been now 4 current scientific papers on first bifurcation, then the guy, Marcus Boiler in MIT also, he's trying to understand it under the generic point of view. We make another scientific paper on the method invented to scan the web. And then the last thing, also when I was at ISU, I met Gilles Clements, who ran a lot of life science experiments on top of the International Space Station. He's very skillful. And then when I met him, this was back in 2000, I said, oh, Tomás, you find a method to scan a 3D web? And I said, yes. And then he said, well, why don't put it on the ISS? And then I said, well, fantastic, you know, because it's kind of back to the dream, you know. So let's say if the spider has something to do with the cosmos, we might be able to send it up there without gravity, and how might be the web. Maybe it's more similar of the cosmic web that everybody talk in the astrophysics world. This means we pull up this paper. We went through 2 selections, but then the third one was missing what now the guy at MIT is giving us. This means we will try to present it again. And this is the paper on bifurcation from a guy in Japan. He's writing. Well, these are other scientific things, and I don't know. But maybe I leave it there and then question, and we talk more with John. Thank you. Yeah. Both, I think so. Me and John. John, if you want to join here, and then we, and Alexander also, which is here in case come up something. Anyway.
For the spider web, did you do any studying of how the spider built it, and then try to replicate what the spider did?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the slides that I got stuck there. Samuel Chockel from the University in Basel, what he does is like motion tracking of the web, right, of the spider. This means she paint a little bit the spider, and then the spider move. Now the problem is like, you know, the spider might do from here to here, then from here to here, and then she make auxiliary webs that then she eat back again. Does it mean the movement that the spider does maybe have like a 50%, or I don't know now, I'm inventing, but it doesn't match with the real web, how she moves, because she make a lot of auxiliary webs to reach the different points that then later are not existing on the web. But anyway, to think about a web as a kind of a static thing is kind of also, I interrupt because the spider all the time keep weaving and weaving and weaving and weaving. Does it mean it's something which all the time is kind of changing? And what we are doing now, something funny, just I forgot, is kind of this idea of making a hybrid web. I'm trying to think about Silicon Valley and the webs. Anyway, but you know, we put a black widow, she made a web, then we put a colony of social spiders. And they weave a web on top of an existing web, which also usually in nature you don't find this, and then that kind of, we are building these kind of hybrid webs, which you never see before.
Material for the balloons.
We actually use a bunch of different materials for things like the tandem, the round balloons, the ping-pong balls, or a latex balloon. And we use for the airships. On the inside, it's a mylar, not the aluminized mylar. It's very thin molecules. Mylar we get from Belgium. And on the outer shell is nylon.
One thing, John, that you said the other day, which I think is pretty interesting also to think about it, is like it's not about like because you know we can wait and wait for better material, but you turn the problem around a little bit, thinking like it's more a problem of changing. You know, how was maybe?
Well, one of that's directly related to balloon material. You know, we want to put a city up there, so basically it's a balloon that floats and never comes down. Right now, the world record for the longest balloon is 4 months. Well, 4 months isn't forever. And NASA has a program, a long duration exposure facility, which is a mouthful, saying they're a balloon that stays up a long time. And it's made out of 7 different materials. And they've just now got it to fly about 4.5 months after about 10 years of work. It's just very advanced bit of material science coming up with that. We ended up doing something different. If we can't make a balloon last more than 4 months, then we turn it from a materials problem to a maintenance problem. In the arms of the station are just like the arms of the airship. They're segmented on the inside with an array of balloons. And you can deflate one and replace it in flight. And we've actually done that now. We take the fluid and you pump it out to the balloons next to it. You swap that one out and then you pump it in. So instead of being this impossible material science problem, it'll eventually get solved. These are really smart guys and they're having a hard time with it. So there's no way we're going to so essentially, we just change the problem to a different problem that we can solve. Again, we make it a maintenance problem. Then we can use a conventional material to do a very unconventional thing.
Is there any goal for putting the dark sky
space intersector into orbit in any way?
The Mountain Sky Station will never go into orbit. It'll always be parked at 140,000 feet. And it'll actually slowly orbit the world. Well, it'll go around the world about once every 40 days. But it's still actually in the atmosphere and only moving at about 80 miles an hour relative to the Earth. But it's the Ascenders, the big airship from there, that actually will go to orbit.
How?
Well, the first thing it does is from the ground, from 140,000 feet to 200,000 feet, is basically a balloon. It's buoyant. And it starts losing its buoyancy as it climbs. But it is slowly beginning to accelerate. And in that portion, the engine itself is primarily in its electric mode, which is very efficient. It doesn't have a whole lot of thrust. We then begin to accelerate, changing the engine to the more electric mode, to the more chemical mode, more like a rocket. So it starts accelerating. We don't break Mach 1 to 320,000 feet. And at 320,000 feet, the sound barrier, we pull the teeth out of that tiger. But it's just a molecule here, a molecule there. In fact, in the 50s, the U.S. was flying regular Mylar weather balloons to Mach 10. This is a program called Project Shotgun. And they would release the balloons. They eventually used them for ICBM decoys. And they had to come up with inflated decoys. Because when we throw airship over, we can't make a balloon go supersonic. Well, there's been about 200 supersonic balloons. In the 50s, and they go to make it Mach 10 with their flying at 300,000 to 400,000 feet in 1954. Can we go to Mach 20 in 2013?
Or even if we go slower, because I think so, because that's what I'm challenging him, is like, do it solar, it will be a nightmare, and I know it's more complicated, but also like I'm kind of going back hey, there is even easy technology, it's, damn, the sun is out there still, until we don't fuck up all the planet, but what is easy is something which is, it's just going back because we are fascinating about this experiment that they're doing, the Japanese, no? Usually like a latex balloon, when you launch it is 100,000 feet, 110, 120, and you said the other day the Japanese, they're having a program which they might reach the 200.
Yeah, the Japanese have gone to 172,000 feet with balloon right now. And their goal next year is to fly a balloon to 200,000 feet.
And just
and it's like the theoretical max is around 280,000 for just buoyancy. So by the time we get that high, we're actually moving forward and using lift on the wings.
We should push them to do it solar. Let's see where we can get it. That's my part of the thing.
Tomás, as an architect, you're an architect, somehow your work as an architect, your work has pushed you to work with, I assume, some aerospace engineers, and with biologists, and with structural engineers, and with artists, and all of that. And I was wondering if you can elaborate, talk a little bit about how you think, architecture relates to all those different fields, and how your experience has been working across many different disciplines.
No, but what I will turn it more in a kind of a complaint towards art and architecture, and then maybe look more to the movie way of doing things. If I will be doing a movie, actually, but it doesn't work so much in the architecture and the art. Always you need kind of but why we don't look how a movie is done? I could say that I'm writing or doing my artwork based on a script or based on a book of John Powell, and then, this is how movies are done. They say, okay, original screenplay was based on, and we can go back to Fuller and so on and so on. Does it mean, what I kind of maybe claim is like this kind of authorship somehow that architects all the time have in the art world also, and how we can maybe reverse this idea. This is why, today was kind of forcing, saying, hey, look, we are here and we are more than here, And I think so how productive also this could turn into a discipline which is basically fundamentally, because I think so there are, when you make a building, how many disciplines you interact there is unbelievable. And I think so the architects are so well prepared of being like being able not only to build building, but think architecture in a term, architecture of a computer system, of a poetry, of a music piece, think about the term of architecture a little bit more wider of what usually architect does, but and see it in other capabilities, which I think so there is a huge potential because they are trained to, mingle with other people all the time. You have to if you want to.
Yeah, question. For both of you, both treading on issues of redundancy and variation from different ends. Wouldn't mind hearing, as you get more complex, as it becomes a city, how have you started to think about those issues?
That's actually if I'm getting, tell me if I'm not interpreting what the question was correctly. But that's actually one of the cores of what we're doing. We call it common architecture. It's such a big project. There's literally tens of thousands of bits of tech on here. A lot of them are new, breaking new ground. They're so complex, you have to start reducing it down. Or else you'll never get there in your lifetime. When we started out, we knew this was going to be a 50-year project. We actually built the timeline of about 50 years ago. Oh my God. And we decided to do it anyway. But if you don't do this thing called common architecture, it's going to be a 200-year project. So, for the simplest example, the flight controller on the rocket is actually the vent controller on the top of the ocean. And it actually sits in the van and turns on the video camera sequencing at the same time. The arms of the station, if you look at the architecture and the layout, is not just similar, but it's identical to the arms of the station as to the arms of the airship. Everything has to get reused over and over and over again. The outer skins, all these different contraptions are very different. But really, it's a very small number of Lego blocks that we're putting together in lots of different ways. And we not only do that with all the technology, but we do that with the organization. And we actually manage how people are building these things. The guy that's running mission control may be the guy that ends up doing the fiberglassing on the weekend. Because we end up training modules on people, and then people end up switching back and forth and cross-training people. Because that same skill there, you wouldn't think that running a mission control van matches the same skill set as mixing 16-part epoxy for a very special application. But when you look at the things he does, he follows a checklist. He's doing very timed sequence events. It's the same thing. Just one gets him out of the van. We can just do that across the board with people and the stuff.
But when I listen talking to John, is how Linux have been built, how some crowdsourcing projects are getting out there. Each of us get like a very small, tiny, which is effortless, costless, because we know how to do it. But it's like if we manage to put all this kind of engineering together, we get that much quicker, it's exactly what he's saying. And, it's like the same when I do the balloon project, it's something you have in your damn house. You just put it together, and then also it's like this myth of I don't know, for me it's more like kind of a critical mass and also thinking not so much in advance, it's just like let people, because I feel it completely arrogant to say, I cannot go sometimes so far. I like when we come to this idea of Lego. You can, have the time all the time. The freedom is just like a brick, and you can make a cathedral, but you can make a wall, you can make whatever you want. It's like find some simplicity where people, might be able, to start to build it somehow.
I see how your experiments switch from the positive space to the negative space. Like the balloon, occupying the balloon void, and then the spider web. Do you see like your next iteration? Can you see those as coming together or switching?
I never see them separate. Maybe it's like a.
You occupy the void, right? The balloon void, and then now you're investigating spider webs and the complexity of it, but the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
They're kind of feeding each other.
Yes.
So you take this information and you put it back onto closing the voids with more precision and. That makes sense?
Yeah. Somebody can answer the question.
No, I mean, that's the way of doing it, I think so. You know, it's like, I don't know. Maybe you have seen something, I have not seen it, but maybe somebody can help me to answer.
Just kind of going off that question, I just was curious, like, if there's, do you ever, like, are you looking for an answer, or is there an end to your research? Because it more seems like...
You know, it's like, sorry, but you know, it's like a... Yeah.
I really like that. So, I don't know, I mean, there's no means to an end. It's just, you're more like an optimist, always looking for something nice.
A good question is half the answer, 50%, you know. It's like always like this.
I guess what I was asking is, what have you learned from spider webs, you know, and how are you going to take that and scale it up to Occupy or your, you know, your large installations? Because obviously these spider webs are super complex, but super minimal in their simplicity.
Yeah, I would say also, like, I don't know. We are trying now for the first time this three-dimensional spider web to try to find the emerging properties of it. This means we are really at the beginning to try to say if it's complex or not complex. It looks like, but you know, maybe there are some rules down there that this mathematician in Japan is trying to find this kind of pattern of bifurcation, that he have a theory of that everything is flat. This means I will not anticipate so much yet. But the other thing is like, well, it's full or not. You know, remember always the relationship that I do with a cosmic webs is like for me, you know, when I see these filaments are kind of filaments which are kind of dots, and these dots are, you know, exoplanets, stars, planets, and then what is void, what is not, you know, it's like I see it like a kind of, you know, maybe, let me put, maybe try to answer like this. You know, there are people on the planet Earth trying to see if there is life somewhere else. No, they build a telescope the first year, 10-centimeter telescope. They look and they say, oh, there is nothing down there. Then next year, they build a telescope a little bit bigger. They put up a telescope like this. They look again. They say, oh, nothing again there. The next year, they make it a bit bigger, the telescope. They look again. No, and now there is a moment that they build a telescope so big that the other ones see first the telescope, that we through the telescope see them. You know, for me, it's all the time, you know, answer question. What are you looking through that sometimes somebody else might see what you are doing, but also in terms of other scientists and other people. You know, when I start to do this research, you know, then come up kind of scientific paper which I never expected, right? But you know, somehow, you know, it's like kind of, and this is what I kind of enjoy. Let me put it, and I don't like to make so much different, but you know, there is this kind of latent state that you can somehow in the art, somehow culture have kind of, it allows you kind of to keep remaining playing for a kind of a certain while, which in architecture I think is fundamental, that we kind of get to this. No, if you finish up the school and then you have to go to a stupid office and start to work for somebody, and then, you know, you pay the thing for 10 years until you dream to open. You know, in the art world, you know, we're kind of surrounded by, you know, grant, scholarship. I was in Holland for 1 year, then in Miami, then here, and they kind of support you until you kind of maybe start to do something which is useful, but maybe not. Who knows about spider webs and whatever.
I'm really taken with this last project, especially in there's like these 8 diagrams, which were these sort of directives for your kind of human assistants or human robots that you had kind of building this thing, the web. And I'm just curious about how important it is to the projects that human beings build these, or whether, you know, maybe you're basically making a set of directions and then deploying people out there to basically build this kind of totally insane structure, right? It's fantastic structure. But are you also in the back of your mind thinking that perhaps humans aren't the best builders of these structures, that there's going to eventually be some kind of, you know, investment in like some kind of other machine, some kind of robot of some sort that's going to have to be able to follow these directions and spin these webs and deploy them. So I'm just curious about you're getting to the point where it's looking like a set of directions that might be translatable by somebody who's dealing with artificial intelligence, dealing with you know, machine vision, all this kind of stuff, that you could really extend the work into that.
No, yeah, I don't know if I answered exactly the question, but what I'm reading, what Wilson, Edward O. Wilson, the man who have studied all the ants and all of this, you know, and then he all the time he asks the question itself, you know, it's like how sociality, which is kind of a term very similar to sociality, is so rare into the animal kingdom, and why so little people have made this, crossed this threshold to recognize or to be able to become social. One of the key characteristics is to sharing the same web and the same nest. Now, I think so that's, I don't know, it's something which is striking me to, the capability of perceiving, and maybe then also with Alexander, thinking now of the, many people, they look at this and they start, the neuron science and the connectome and left and forward, which I kind of like it also pretty much of this kind of, beside, the normal internet and this kind of potentiality. But, maybe, I don't know if it's exactly the question, but, for me is, and what I'm working now with social spiders, out of 43,000 species that we know on the planet Earth, only 20 of them have been turned in social behavior, spiders. Out of 43,000, only 20 species have done. And why so rare? It's like a, and then, and that, and then there's this kind of effort, to try to combine one thing to the other. But yes, I think this is, the capability of, because sometimes you are so alien to me, like I could be from you, you know what I mean? And then how we could turn this into something. That was a bad answer for finish up, but.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Just the last thing.